Welcome back to the Take Your Life Back Summit, your roadmap out of chronic pain, fatigue, and autoimmune disorders. And I'm your host, Dr. Heather Yost. I'm excited to announce today's speaker and my friend, John Imel. He is a certified Ayurvedic practitioner and the founder of Joyful Belly, an extensive educational Ayurvedic website, school, and digestive care clinic with thousands of free recipes and informative articles. Drawing on his years of research and clinical experience, John took his knowledge further and created Joyful Belly's School of Ayurvedic Digestion and Nutrition. If you're interested in Ayurveda, John encourages you to learn your unique Ayurvedic body type for the best results possible. If you know your body type, head over to joyfulbelly.com to take the free quiz and get your results instantly. So thank you for being here. I'm excited to have you on the summit, and I just truly appreciate your time.
Yes, I'm very excited to talk to everyone who's been following the summit about Ayurveda and all that really Ayurveda can help them.
Great, perfect. Before we sort of dive into that, would you mind just telling us your story? Everybody loves to know where these experts come from, why they're so passionate, and why it's important to them.
Yes. Well, I certainly never expected to get started in Ayurveda myself. It was a kind of fluke for me that I ended up getting interested in Ayurveda and becoming so passionate about it. I started my adult life as a computer scientist and mathematician at Harvard University. And so many people always ask me, like, well, how did you get from computers and math to Ayurveda, which is a system of healing? And really, probably the connecting point was that I got very sick. I had been traveling internationally for quite some time. And I was living in Bangladesh for about a year, working on a project over there, when I became very ill with a digestive disorder. And in addition to that, I would say that I didn't get started in Ayurveda right away when that happened. I really didn't know what to do, actually. But along the way, I heard of Ayurveda, and since Ayurveda is kind of from that part of the world, Bangladesh, India, South Asian continent, I was a little intrigued about it. I had some experience with that culture. And so I started to look into it. And immediately after looking into it, I was like, oh, no way, this is not for me. I kind of rejected it. And the reason why is because it seemed to be very restrictive around food at first glance. And being in my family culture, food was always very important. It was a way that we showed our love for one another. And so I didn't want anything that was very restrictive diet-wise. And so I rejected Ayurveda for about a year. And then I just kept hearing about it. And I ended up, someone ended up loaning, just loaning me some books and things about it. And I read into it, and I started to realize that Ayurveda wasn't this restrictive diet practice. Actually, it was a way of talking about food that was wholly new. It was a way of almost describing how my body was interacting with food using a whole new language that was more experiential. And I realized that it was something that I could do at home without like lab tests and all the complexities that we're used to, all this complex technology, that it was something very simple. And so I realized it was something I could just build into my life, and that it would increase my creativity around food and understanding of it. And so I started to eat it up. And the rest is history. I got very interested in it. I was one of those like endlessly zealous students when I was in school, and I've been doing it 24/7 ever since. I mean, I'm always doing Ayurveda. I love it. I believe in it. And so it's something that is a real passion. And it's helped me heal from that illness that I had.
I love it. You said that it increased your creativity, which how many people think of that around food? I love that. Thank you for saying that. And you just started eating it up. So what is Ayurveda? And what is it about? Can you define it?
Yes. Ayurveda is a system of medicine from ancient India, and it's many thousands of years old. And that's its origin. It comes out of that culture. But what is it? Or why is it different? I mean, Chinese medicine comes from China. What makes Ayurveda different from Chinese medicine, Western medicine, and other forms of dieting is that it's a way of looking at the world that's experiential. So we have a very similar understanding of the body as Chinese medicine, but in terms of food, we're always talking about the different ways that food makes us feel and really appreciating that on a deeper level. So, for example, we have these common sayings in our culture that, that chili peppers are hot, right? We all know that chili peppers are hot. Even if you put a chili pepper in the freezer and then you eat it, there's something about it that's still hot, right? And the same thing we'll talk about cool as a cucumber, right? We know that there's something cooling and soothing about cucumbers that it just isn't present for chilies. And so in Ayurveda, we're looking at those basic experiences and trying to understand what that means for our body and how to use foods medicinally on that basis. And what ends up is this very rich, very personal way of relating, understanding, or interacting with food that turns out to be extremely helpful for our health. And some simple examples of this. If you had a bunch of acid reflux, you probably just wouldn't start eating a bunch of chilies, right? It's going to make it worse. And that's a very simple example, but it's the kind of it's Ayurveda's approach to things in that very experiential way that I said before makes you more creative, not less, because you are appreciating the food in a different way.
Right. I love that you said that, appreciating food in a different way. I know that Joyful Belly actually focuses a lot on digestion. Can you dive into that a little bit more and explain why is it so important with Ayurveda?
Digestion is very important, not just in Ayurveda, but to our health. What we have to appreciate is that about 60% of our daily metabolism goes towards digestion. That means the rest of our life fits in the other 40%. And if we think about that for a moment, it means that digestion is the most important thing we do every day. Now, we're all familiar when we get sick that the doctor tells us to stay at home and don't go to work that day, rest on the couch. Why are we going to do that? We're resting on the couch because we know that if we use up all of our energy in our stressful workday and we're doing lots of other things, we're not going to have energy to fight off the disease. Well, let's bring this back to digestion. If digestion takes 60% of our daily metabolism, is it better to lie on the couch and not go to work? Or is it better to eat foods that are very easy to digest and go to work, right? I mean, what if we could make some food choices that made that only 20% of our metabolism? Well, we'd recover 40% right there for our natural healing process. Now, in reality, I'm going to tell my clients to sit on the couch and eat something easy to digest, right? And that way they bounce back very quickly and they can start feeling good again. So it's because digestion is such an energy hog that we want to pay attention to it. There's another reason, however, that's a little bit more insidious, why we want to pay attention to our digestion. If our digestion's not working, what's going to happen? What's going to happen is all the bacteria that live in our gut are going to start to digest that food for us, and they're going to ferment it, basically. They're going to get the nutrients instead of us, and we're going to be depriving our body of nutrients. On top of that, bacteria gone crazy in your gut creates a lot of toxicity and bacteria endotoxins. It's a natural thing. They release it from the food when they're digesting it, and that gets in our bloodstream and causes all kinds of problems. It's poisonous, basically. And so I've given 3 reasons right there why we want to focus on digestion. 1, because of it's such a huge metabolic drain. 2, that if we're not digesting well, we're not absorbing the nutrients that we need to be vital. And 3, because when we're not digesting, bacteria turn our food into poison.
Boy, I like that you said that. 3 reasons to focus on digestion. I think it's
Yes.
something that our listeners so easily pass aside and don't realize how important it is to be focusing on how you're eliminating and how you're digesting food. I'm glad you said that. But how does digestion relate to fatigue?
Yes. Okay. So these three things that I mentioned are already the seeds of that. We're all familiar with what happens after Thanksgiving meal, right? What do we all do?
Yeah.
We all just lie down on the couch and sleep. And during that period is exactly when our body is taking all the energy out of our blood and using it to make enzymes. So after we eat, we've got this big wad of food in our stomach, and our stomach has to pump 2/3 of a liter of acid into the stomach in order to start digesting food. In order to get all those fluids into the stomach and to make those acids, it requires a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
And so our brain kind of shuts down, and our body focuses on that digestion for a little while, and we feel a little bit tired while that's happening. Now, I know a lot of people are sitting in front of their computer eating lunch while multitasking. And here's what happens when you do that. If you don't give your body the energy that it needs in the initial phase of digestion, your body will, that initial phase where it's focused on it will be incomplete. And the food will kind of churn in your stomach for quite some time after that. And then what you see is like the 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock time period, that later part of the day, where the person just totally runs out of steam, where they do not have the energy anymore to complete their day. Well, what should they do in that case? In that case, what they want to do instead is they want to eat their meal without looking at their computer. You've all heard that before. That's not news. But you also want to give your body about 15 minutes of time after you eat so that this initial surge of digestion can complete its course. And you'll see that you naturally revive after that. It happened to me today when I ate lunch. I felt a little tired. It was a very pleasant, kind of calm, peaceful sort of, post-brandial tiredness. And I enjoyed it. And after that 15-minute period, I was ready to go back into action, and I did. And I still feel vibrant, and I have my vitality for the rest of the day. When I do that, I gain more than I lose by waiting that 15 minutes. So that's one answer to your question. We could go right down the line and continue to offer a little more richness in that question if you want, Heather.
Is that really what you would say is the first step to addressing fatigue according to Ayurvedic medicine, is just to what you just said?
Absolutely. There's nuances, as I just mentioned already. But the first thing is, how are we treating this part of our body that takes up 60% of our energy? Is really a primary question. Now, and this just goes to show Ayurvedic's method so well, because people come to me for fatigue and they're like, well, what herb do you have for fatigue? Or what herb do you have, or what other remedy do you have that's going to just get rid of my fatigue? And then Ayurveda is going to step back and say, well, wait a second. What's really going on here? Is your body being supported properly? And let's just start right from the top. What are the main factors that are causing the fatigue in the first place before we throw an herb at it? And that's where we're trying to look at that root cause, start right at the beginning, and then work our way. It may be 3 or 4 sessions before we actually start talking about the client's fatigue, because what we want to do is make sure that they're strong and vital first. And then once we're doing everything we can to help their body is going to be dealing with the fatigue. Your body's the best pharmaceutical you have. And then if we need to put a little icing on the cake, a little herb for fatigue, we will. So yeah, we're going to start at digestion, but in many more ways than the one that I just mentioned about resting after eating.
Okay, great. Well, that gives everybody something that they can do on their own at home. Is there another key point that they need to make sure that they do with meals?
Well, there are a few key points. Ayurveda has this idea of a body type. And really what this means in body type is that there are some fundamental differences between individuals. And when we see that, when we're aware of those differences, we can tailor the treatment plan to the client. So Ayurveda has 3 main body types in it. They're called Vata, which is spelled V-A-T-A, Pitta, which is spelled P-I-T-T-A, and Kapha, K-A-P-H-A. These are the 3 body types in Ayurveda. They're a broad generalization. No one's going to fit exactly into one of those. Expect them to be everything that a broad generalization is, right? In a consultation with a client or clinic, we'll get much more specific. But with their body type, we immediately start to tailor the treatment to the client. So what's going to make a Vata person feel really fatigued? That's the first body type. Vata people tend to be very deficient. They tend to be underweight. And if they're eating foods that are, bless you. If they're eating foods that are very drying or a diuretic or very difficult to digest, they're going to be twice as fatigued as someone else. If a Pitta person, now Pitta people are characterized by heat and inflammation. If they're eating too many chilies, that's going to increase that heat and inflammation for that person. And that's going to eventually increase burnout for them. Pitta people get fatigued due to burnout. And so we're going to try to not overheat them. We're going to be keeping them cool as a cucumber if we want to avoid them, avoid fatigue for them. And then there's Kapha. Kapha individuals tend to have conditions of congestion and excess. They may be a little overweight or some kind of backup in their system. And so for those individuals, if they're eating cheese or ice cream or really heavy food, that's going to totally bog down their system. And so when a client comes into our clinic and says, well, I'm looking for something to help me with their fatigue. Well, the Kapha person, I'm going to tell them, eat a lighter diet. But for the Vata person who gets deficiency, I might give them cheese and some ice cream, right? So one person's remedy might be the cause for another client. And so we're not looking at these universal remedies like, oh, take this herb and it's going to work for everyone. No, for one person, the herb may cause fatigue. For another person, it relieves fatigue. And Ayurveda brings that level of specificity and personalization very naturally and very easily into the dialogue with the client.
I like that. I think it's a very valid point that our listeners should understand that not everybody, it's not a one size fits all. Everybody needs something different. How does Joyful Belly start to define each individual body type, and what do they have to offer for the clients?
Yes. So you've already mentioned that clients can go to joyfulbelly.com and take that free quiz, and then they'll see what their body type is. And once they know what their body type is, they can click and read a lot about it. There's a bunch of resources on the website to help people get oriented with that. And we offer this 1-week course for people to learn a lot more about their body type in this sort of very natural way of helping themselves. But I think your question was also of a different nature, that how can a person, or what are the ways that people even start to figure this out other than just going to the website?
Right.
Well, it requires an understanding of what the body types really are. Our body types are really how we use energy. And different people tend to spend a lot of energy. They tend to have a revved up metabolism. Other people are very efficient in the way that they use their energy, and some people tend to save their energy. We all know that person who's constantly putting themselves out there, right? They're signed up for the theater, and they're helping, at a soup kitchen, and they're traveling to another country for 2 weeks, and they change jobs every year or two, and they're just so interested in so many different things, and so full of life. But you can imagine that there's a little bit of a loss of focus there, or that they may be living a bit of a rough lifestyle, or they're not nurturing themselves enough, and because they're putting themselves out there. And And so it's all in how they're using their energy. And if they're that type of person that tends to move a lot, they're probably a Vata person, that first body type I mentioned, because the function of Vata is movement. So, so once we see that that's their style and that their way of doing things, that has a big effect on their whole life and on their physiology. If you're running around like crazy all the time, then you're going to get a deficiency condition. You're going to have, dry skin or poor digestion. There's rest and digest, and there's fight or flight, right? Your body's not going to be in that rest and digest mode if you're a Vata person, and that's going to cause problems. So we'll be looking at the client's personality to see what are their characteristics. I can tell when a client walks into my office by the time they sit in the chair, just from looking at their whole body, their bones, and the way that their body nourishes themselves. If I see that there's more emphasis on bone than, say, body fat, I'm going to be thinking more a Vata body type. If I look at their intake and I see that they have gas and bloating and some indigestion issues, I'm going to be thinking more on Vata. Whereas if I see inflammation, severe sort of reactive conditions, autoimmune disorders, allergies, I'm going to be thinking of that Pitta type, that hot body type. And if I see sluggishness, a person who wakes up slowly in the morning and feels kind of groggy, a person who's very patient and affectionate, even in situations of adversity, and a person who tends to get stuck or complacent in their psychology, I'm going to be thinking more Kapha condition. And so I'm looking at their body and the different tissues of their body and seeing how they're expressing themselves. I'm looking at their nervous system, their personality and lifestyle, and that's going to give me all the clues to what their body type is. As a practitioner, like I said, there's so many cues that by the time a person sits down in the office, I can tell you their body type and many things about their personality and other things. And when a person gets interested in Ayurveda, they start to see that in their family and stuff too. They'll be like walking down the sidewalk and they'll look at someone and they'll be like, oh yeah, I can kind of guess the type of person that might be, or what their personality even might be, just from the physical characteristics, because there's such a relationship between the body and our nervous system and way of expressing ourselves.
Would you say that most autoimmune sufferers are that second body type, or is there quite a bit of overlap?
There can be a lot of overlap. You can't just take one symptom in isolation because, for example, a particular organ could be stressed. Let's take the thyroid gland and Hashimoto's thyroiditis, an autoimmune condition. Now, there could be several reasons why the thyroid gland is stressed and starts to attack itself, basically. And depending upon that reason why the organ is stressed, it could be any one of the three body types. Okay. However, if there's an autoimmune condition, it means that Pitta is aggravated, that heat is aggravated, that inflammation is aggravated. So even though they may be one of the three body types, now we know there's a Pitta imbalance in their body.
Okay, so what you're saying is that really all three body types live in every single person. It's just which one is the overwhelming type at that time. Okay, great. That makes sense.
Yes. So that a person has a natural tendency to favor one body type, and in addition to that, any one of the three could be aggravated or imbalanced at any moment.
Okay. So when you look at the process of healing and repair and recovery, is that a process of days, weeks, months, and what does that consist of?
It all depends on the condition that's being addressed. If a person is fatigued, and getting back to this issue of fatigue, if a person's fatigued because of they're working the night shift and their body can't handle it, it could literally be a matter of days if they stop doing that one thing. But if a person is fatigued due to a chronic deficiency disorder that they've had for 10 years, we're going to be doing some work to rebuild strength in their whole constitution. So it does depend on the condition, but there's a general process that we use in Ayurveda to bring a person back into balance. And the first step is avoiding the offense, right? it's in Ayurveda, we're not looking to add more to the problem. We're usually looking to take things away from the problem. And this is bad news for people who are, selling, tons of different products and things like that, of course. But the first thing that we want to do is try to remove the cause and identify that in the diet and in the lifestyle, and let their body kind of settle down a little bit. And then what we want to do is, once we've removed that cause, we'll address digestion next. So that way, we get them eating a diet that's supportive for their body and helping them recover some of their energy from that 60% monster that's eating up their metabolism. The next thing that we're going to do after that is try to clean out the blood, cleanse the blood. If there's any thing that's sort of stuck or sludgy in the blood, if a person's been eating lots of ice cream, pizza, and cheese recently, their blood's going to be thick. There's going to be maybe too much salt, too much sugar, too high triglycerides, or any number of issues in the blood itself. So we'll try to clean out the blood and lymphatic system. And then I mentioned that icing on the cake in the past, where we will give them an herb to address a specific organ or a specific need in their body. And this is when we would start to address the fatigue directly in the nervous system, where we would give them an herb like ashwagandha, one of Ayurveda's most famous adaptogen herbs to help people who have fatigue is ashwagandha. It's a great herb and very supportive for individuals that may be a little frazzled from, their nervous system may be frazzled. And that herb helps one of the body types. And then the other two body types, we have other kinds of herbs that would help them with their fatigue.
You bring up a really valid point with ashwagandha. It reminds me of a patient actually, and I wondered if you could comment on this, especially since there's sort of there's a process that you have to go through. What if somebody has a symptom and they play the name it and the blame it game, and they think, well, I've got this problem and ashwagandha, according to the internet, is going to help me, but they don't go through the 1, 2, and 3. Can you just comment on or let our listeners know how important it is to do this in the right order?
Yeah, absolutely. This is all where a lot of the confusion around herbs as a use for medicine really comes into play, because people will be taking a kind of one size fits all approach with herbs, or they're looking for that easy pill to take it. I mean, they could take ashwagandha for the rest of their lives if they want to go on with a habit or eating some food that's hurting them. But ultimately, it's going to create a strain in their body. What you're doing in the bulk of your day is going to be more powerful than the herb that you take 3 times a day. And so we've got to, put the horse before the cart, so to speak, and get the cause taken care of first. And then when we give the client an herb, it's not going to be just the same herb for every client with fatigue. If you did a longitudinal study or a statistical study, and this has been done, where they compared Ayurvedic herbs against aspirin for arthritis, and they took all these famous formulas in Ayurveda and compared them against their efficacy with arthritis, and compared them with aspirin, and they found that aspirin outperformed all these herbs when you gave them to a random group of 1,000 people, right? And so this was a big disappointment, because it's like, oh, well, then these herbs don't work. They're not as good as aspirin. But the funny thing is that in Ayurveda, we would never give herbs to a random group of people. We would never randomize our use of an herb for arthritis. What we would do is this. We may have a hunch that an herb might be good for a person, and we might use a formula for 10 or 15 different clients, and maybe the first 10 or so it doesn't work that well, but then the 11th client, it worked perfectly, and it fixed their arthritis. Well, right then and there, I'm going to study everything about that 11th person to try to figure out why that particular herb worked for that particular person. And then I may see 15 clients for arthritis after that, and only one of those clients resembles that 11th client that I just talked about, and I'll give them the herb, and it'll work every time. So because I've figured out how herbs for a specific type of person, and then over the course of my clinical practice, if I'm an expert in arthritis, or I've trained in Ayurveda and in using Ayurveda for arthritis with some other experts, I may have 10 or 15 different formulas. And any one of those formulas, if you tested them over 1,000 individuals, they'll underperform aspirin. But I know exactly how to pick from that 1,000 which clients that particular formula is going to work for, so that every client of arthritis that comes into my clinic, I can match the right herb for them and have a much higher success rate. And so it's really that personalization, not in these randomizations that where Ayurveda really comes into its value.
And for you listeners, if you didn't catch that, please rewind and listen to that again. John brings out such a valuable point that we all need to not just listen to, but we need to hear. There is not a pill for an ill, and that's the same thing whether you're in a medical environment or a natural environment, homeopathic, herbs, vitamins, nutrients. Please do not just go start trying to get a pill for an ill for whatever it is. You need guidance and coaching. It needs not to be randomized. It needs to be controlled and specified to exactly what you're going through. So thank you for saying that. I mean, that truly, please, everybody rewind, listen to what John said again, because that is huge and such a big take-home point. I wonder when our listeners are going to wonder where, I know we talked about where to find you. Is that the best place? Should they go to your website? And again, can you say the website name again?
Yeah, it's called joyfulbelly.com. And we've got a bunch of recipes on there. We've got a bunch of ingredients on there that are all tailored to an individual body type. So you can take your quiz and then easily access food and other things that would be compatible with your particular system. And we've just got a bunch of other tools there to help people get oriented. Because in Ayurveda, yes, we could do a consultation. I could tell you about it. I'm happy to see clients and spell this out for you, hold your hand and make it easy for you. And we do offer, those week-long courses and all that. But ultimately, in Ayurveda, you're the one that's going to be implementing your health and wellness plan. And when you do that, it's not just about, you're not just going to feel better, but you're also going to sort of see the world in a new way. You're going to and interact with the world in a new way. And so it's kind of a very refreshing on a number of levels to start to learn this. It's a real eye opener for people when they start to look into it, and it's very pleasant. It's a very happy kind of thing, which is why we called it Joyful Belly in the first place. Is because it is a kind of happy thing. So we do try to make all those resources available to make it easy for you to learn Ayurveda. And like I said, I'm happy to meet with you in our clinic and help you with digestive disorders or other imbalances that you might be having with your body that you think, okay, a little personalization could help here.
That's great. And I believe you have a free gift that you're offering all of our listeners.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I know our staff set up that free gift. Can you tell me what was the one they sent you? Do you have that listed?
I believe that it's part of your book. So let's just make sure that all listeners are headed that way. Take advantage of it. Your talk is available for 72 hours. So please click on it, enter your email address, make sure that you're taking advantage of his free gift as well. Okay. So if it was a book, it's the Explore Your Hunger book. And that Explore Your Hunger book, it's an ebook that we published about 2 years ago now, and it really explains this process of how you can learn how to see food in that way, that you learn this vocabulary for how you experience food. That's one of Ayurveda's greatest gifts, is that it will give you a vocabulary to talk about food in a very simple way, that you can even talk with a person who doesn't know Ayurveda about it. Like I mentioned before, chilies are hot, cucumbers are cool. We know that. And if I mention that to my parents or to my friends and they don't know about Ayurveda, they're still going to get it.
Well, there's a whole vocabulary that Ayurveda has developed like that, so that you can talk about food and know food on another level. And it's all in that book, Explore Your Hunger, a fun book to read. And so check out that free giveaway, and we're happy to offer that to you.
Okay, thank you so much. I truly, truly appreciate it. Before we close down, I've been asking all of the experts the same question, so I'm not picking on you. But I wondered if we happened upon walking in your kitchen and opened your fridge, what would be 2 things that we would find every single time in your refrigerator?
Oh, that's a great question. And it's a question that I love to ask people too. Let me think about that for a second. There are, my answer to that would definitely be seasonal. I'll say that because there are different things that fit with your body in different seasons. And right now, it's April. And one of the things that characterizes April is that this is a time of year where you catch a hop, right? We're all used to the terminology of catching a cold, right? And in the old days, for Louis Pasteur and the germ theory of medicine, you could only catch a cold in the fall, because it was when that first day in October, when the temperature dropped and you weren't expecting it, and you're still wearing your summer shorts, that you would get this sudden attack on those symptoms associated with a common cold. Well, this time of year you get a common hot. What happens is, on a hot day, your body is not prepared for the sudden change in heat. And so what your body does this time of year is it wants to get rid of that layer of winter fat that it's built up. And so all this fat starts to get put into the bloodstream, and your whole system gets very congested. You might notice puffiness this time of year. You wake up on a hot day and you feel a little bit sluggish, a little bit puffy. And so what you want to do this time of year is relieve that congestion. And the best thing to relieve that congestion and to infuse your body with all that great spring energy is something very fresh and vital. These kind of tender young spring greens that you can get in the store. Anything from bean sprouts to those hydroponic lettuces that they grow. But some very tender young green, you can pick them out in the woods if you know your weeds well, which I love to do. But you eat these tender young spring greens, and the bitterness pulls that congestion out of your body. And so if you were to open my fridge in spring, you're going to see something fresh and green like that. That's just very, you can just, even as we're talking about it, you can probably feel like, oh yeah, that feels like so nice and good. Well, if we were having this conversation in October and I was talking to you about fresh greens, you'd be like, I think I want a piece of pumpkin pie. Well, so it does change seasonally. So you'll always find in the spring something fresh and green in my fridge.
That is awesome. What about 2 favorite products or supplements? Like if you were to get stuck on a deserted island and you can only have 2 products or supplements, do you have favorites?
I do. One, I love getting stuck on islands, not desert islands, tropical islands. Yes. And so I would probably pick coconuts as the first one. One, I tend to be a little pitta, and coconuts are cool. Just think of that nice pina colada. I always get them virgin pina coladas, and they're so refreshing anytime I'm in a tropical country. I just love the use of coconut for cooling down my system and my body. I love coconut oil. I love to make coconut butter. I'll take those shavings and whip them into a butter. All you need is the shavings. You don't need any other ingredients. So that would be a real simple one, a real joyful one. And I would probably take another herb with me called shatavari, a great herb. I mentioned ashwagandha already. Shatavari is another herb in Ayurveda that it's a nourishing herb, an antimicrobial herb, and also its biggest thing is that it makes the body nice and juicy and affectionate. It's a very affectionate herb. And so, after doing all this Ayurveda thinking all day, I'm ready for something that's a little bit more heartfelt, and that shatavari is a great herb for that.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much for being here, John. I truly appreciate it.
Yeah, it was a great chance to, I love talking about Ayurveda. I'm so glad that we got a chance to talk together and introduce Ayurveda to your group. So thank you so much for having me.
Me too. Me too. It's been a blessing to have you on the panel. Well, to all of our listeners, that's our segment for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Please watch your email inbox every morning, because we're going to be bringing you more experts, more information, more opportunities for hope, healing, and we want you to have a great day. Take care, be well, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.
Take care.